The reading from the narrative lectionary comes to us this morning from Joshua, the 24th chapter, verses 1 through 26. Then Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel to Shechem, and summoned the elders, the heads, the judges, and the officers of Israel, and they presented themselves before God. And Joshua said to the people, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, long ago your ancestors, Terah and his sons Abraham and Nahor, lived beyond the Euphrates and served other gods. Then I took your father Abraham from beyond the river and led him through all the land of Canaan and made his offspring many. I gave him Isaac, and to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. I gave Esau the hill country of Seir to possess. But Jacob and his children went down to Egypt. Then I sent Moses and Aaron, and I plagued Egypt with what I did in its midst. And afterwards I brought you out. When I brought your ancestors out of Egypt, you came to the sea, and the Egyptians pursued your ancestors with chariots and horsemen to the Red Sea. When they cried out to the Lord, he put darkness between you and the Egyptians and made the sea come over upon them and cover them. And your eyes saw what I did to Egypt. Afterwards you lived in the wilderness a long time. Then I brought you to the land of the Amorites, who lived on the other side of the Jordan. They fought with you, and I handed them over to you, and you took possession of their land, and I destroyed them before you. Then King Balak, son of Zippor of Moab, set out to fight against Israel. He sent and invited Balaam, son of Beor, to curse you, but I would not listen to Balaam. Therefore he blessed you, so I rescued you out of his hand. When you went over the Jordan and came to Jericho, the citizens of Jericho fought against you, and also the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, and I handed them over to you. I sent the hornet ahead of you, which drove out before you the two kings of the Amorites. It was not by your sword or by your bow. I gave you a land which you had not labored, and towns that you had not built, and you live in them. You eat the fruit of vineyards and olive yards that you did not plant. Now therefore revere the Lord and serve him in sincerity and faithfulness. Put away the gods that your ancestors served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. Now if you are unwilling to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served in the region beyond the river of the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." Then the people answered, "Far be it from us that we should forsake the Lord and serve other gods. For it is the Lord our God who brought us and our ancestors up from the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, and who did these great signs in our sight. He protected us along all the way that we went, and among all the peoples through whom we passed. And the Lord drove out before us all the people, the Amorites who lived in the land. Therefore we also will serve the Lord, for he is our God." But Joshua said to the people, "You cannot serve the Lord, for he is a holy God. He is a jealous God. He will not forgive your transgressions or your sins. If you forsake the Lord and serve foreign gods, then he will turn and do you harm and consume you after having done you good." And the people said to Joshua, "No, we will serve the Lord." Then Joshua said to the people, "You are witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen the Lord to serve him." And they said, "We are witnesses." He said, "Then put away the foreign gods that are among you, and incline your hearts to the Lord, the God of Israel." The people said to Joshua, "The Lord our God we will serve, and him we will obey." So Joshua made a covenant with the people that day, and made statutes and ordinances for them at Shechem. Joshua wrote these words in the book of the law of God, and he took a large stone and set it up there under the oak in the sanctuary of the Lord. Word of God, word of life.
Thanks be to God.
I'm going to preach from here today because my microphone doesn't work. So it's a difficult thing. It's just my hurt luck is what I think it was. So, and now of course I'm having trouble with my iPad, which is what I wrote this thing on. Okay, here we go. Now I got it. That's the way it is. So my mind is in a bit of a jumble today. I mean, just driving up here is, and coming up to this place, I'm really glad to be back in what we call the Palouse. These rolling hills seem to feed my soul in ways that it never did when I was growing up just 40 miles away from here in that little German village called Endicott. Yeah, just down the road. For the first 18 years of my life, that was my territory, and this was my territory. That once beautiful little town, not so beautiful anymore, that taught me much. Though at the time, my only concern was, how the heck do I get out of here? Little town, Dad didn't own a farm, so not much to do but get out. And when that time came, to choose where I would go, I didn't choose WSU, I'm sorry, or someplace close. It was time to spread my wings, and I went off to Texas Lutheran College in Seguin, Texas, for the next 5 years. And after that, I moved and moved over and over again before I ended up in Pasco to raise my family and to serve there for 23 years as a pastor. But as I've aged, I have realized something. I grew to appreciate this land and more the beautiful hills that were either gold, green, or golden, depending on the year. But today I also come to sadness. That's part of my mixed sadness. For a member of my family died on Friday. She was a neighbor and a family member for my whole youth. She married my oldest cousin, who was quite a bit older than me, and proceeded to have 6 kids, who I ran with almost every day. My memories of Joyce are vivid, and I can spend hours telling you the stories. And I will know I'll be making that trip to Endicott again very soon. Stories are so important for us, and they reveal who we are and what we could be as well. And on this day, I need to move from the stories of my family for now and turn to a story to be told and a gospel to be proclaimed. This is indeed the story of Joshua. Or rather, it is Joshua retelling the story of Israel's history up to that point and how they got there. But it's more than just that. It's about God's story and how it's about what God has done. It's about God doing it all, really. And it's quite a list that Joshua, stated, and then the people repeated back. It was like liturgy, wasn't it? Repeating back and forth that story. It was the highlights of a long and arduous journey from slavery to freedom, to finding out what it was to be a covenant people of God. But through it all, there was one main actor. And it's not Moses, and it's not Joshua. It is the one who always acts first. It is God. God freeing, God leading, God guiding, and God making new possibilities a reality. And why does God do this? Why Israel? A ragtag bunch of former slaves and refugees. What makes them so special? The treasured possession of God as was God spoke in last week's lesson, as they gathered there at Sinai. It is not because they were the greatest, but because they were the smallest. They were weak, not strong. It's so they and eventually we would learn and know that freedom is a gift, not an achievement. Now that's a hard lesson to learn. That goes against everything America tells us. You know, make America great again. Oops, I went there, didn't I? We don't get it in our world. We resist the idea that we are to serve and not be served. Yet, even this freedom we treasure is a gift. It was a gift for the people of Israel. Yahweh brought them out of Egypt on the eagle's wings, as it said last week, as God gave Israel the Decalogue, or the 10 words, as it actually says in the Bible, in the Hebrew. I like that name better than 10 Commandments, for it gives it a context. To have just the commandments is to hear only the law as it accuses us of failing. It's an awful thing to have only the law, for God becomes judge, ready to send all those sinners to hell. And of course, we don't see ourselves as one of those. That ain't us, we say to ourselves. But here in context, we see God's first act of grace and love towards his people. I am the Lord your God, and you shall be my people. And then it comes for a way to the people with these 10 words to say, yes, this is how we will try and live. And then, when we fail, and yeah, we will have that chance for repentance and grace all over again. And Joshua is retelling this story in this context, or at least back their context, for another reason too. He is retelling the stories, for the people are moving to something brand new. They have spent years as slaves, and then more years as nomads, and now they will become settled. They will live in towns and villages, which they have not done before. They will farm. And sometimes as they learn the new ways of living there, they will be tempted to forget who they were and where they came from. For they got Yahweh. And when they do that, they begin to follow other gods. Yahweh is sort of their God, but they don't listen nearly as much as they used to. The narrative, this retelling, is for all of Israel's ancient history, from the book of Joshua through the book of Kings of Israel. I mean, if you go from Joshua and read this little thing, it sounds like everything is all settled, right? They're ready to move into the land, or they're in the land. Everything's been accomplished. And then you read Judges, and it goes, they had a little trouble. A lot of trouble there. They continue to have to struggle with other gods, other ways of doing things that led them to something that was not what they were called to be. They went down the path to greatness and found out that the path to greatness always leads to ruin. To be God's covenant people is a struggle. It is. They kept wandering off. We keep wandering off. We do sometimes think we are better than others, greater than others. We are worthy, we imagine. But last week's lesson, and this one, and so many others we will encounter, tell a different story. The 10 words and Joshua's words say no to that. Just because you are chosen doesn't mean you are great or that you are worthy of it all. And as we move through those scriptures, that's the refrain. And when we, as the people of the cross, get to Jesus, we see that message really is the same. Do you know that there's a connection between Joshua and Jesus? Do you know what the connection is?
Same
The
name.
name. Thank you. The name. Yahweh Hebrew word for Jesus. In case you didn't know that. That's, it was little Joshua, not, my son's name is Joshua too, so my oldest son, who by the way went to that other place in Seattle. Yeah, I know. I know. His mother went there too, okay? So, but anyway, where was I? Yeah, see, I lose. I lose. But they're the same. And the meaning of the word is God saves. Wow. Joshua, in his very name, sees the act of grace of God. And Jesus, of course, embodies it. That's powerful. Jesus is that reality incarnate. And God became a human being, we confess. And everything that we do as God's covenant people is seen through the lens of Jesus. As we encounter Jesus in word and in sacrament, as we see also his role as both Savior and teacher, fulfiller and redeemer. Joshua and Jesus are calling upon all of you here at Trinity Lutheran to follow. Joshua's last words show that we shall serve the Lord. And of course the people said, we shall serve the Lord, and we're going to stumble. Oh wait a minute, they didn't put the stumble part, but the stumbling is there. And Jesus calls upon us and says, follow me. My confirmation verse, I don't know if you do that here or not, but in Endicott under Fred Schneider, you did it. You all had a confirmation verse. Mine was Matthew 4:19. Follow me and I will make you fish for people. I knew I was going to get past with that. I did. 10 years old, to be honest with you. That's another story about Luther Haven, too. But that's what it's about. Following. And then he calls us to serve. In the retelling of the story by Joshua and our daily baptismal encounter, we experience God's love and forgiveness over and over again. We have a model of God's way of life and community. And there is a rhythm to it of God and grace. God's grace first, saying, you are mine. You are baptized. Followed by our attempted faithfulness. And as we said in our confession, or more often it could be faithlessness. But not always. But that's what we're being called. And we will fail and stumble, and then comes God's words of forgiveness again. God picking us up and dusting us off and telling us to begin anew. That you are loved. That you are renewed by the grace of it all as you encounter love. For love is the key. It's the key in the Old Testament and the New Testament. It was God's love that acted first and shows us how to live a loving, faithful life. Loving service not to ourselves, but for all people, all of creation. If our lives are filled with hate and rejection and inclusion, it's not about Jesus. And it's not about our covenant relationship with God. So, this ancient story is inviting us to be part of it all. Knowing that we will fail and falter. We sin. But with hope, we rise again, and as it says in Joshua and Jesus, we shall serve our God. We shall love the unlovable. And we shall turn to God in faithfulness. Joyce, who I mentioned earlier, my cousin's wife, wasn't perfect by any means in any of my memories of her. If you had 6 kids in 1 bathroom and 4 bedrooms in a house, you wouldn't be perfect either. But for over 60 years, she played the organ. at Trinity Lutheran Church in Endicott. She served. She loved. She, through music, showed my community what love sounded like. For me today, like Joshua and Jesus, she invites us all to be faithful. Not to be perfect, but faithful in the love and peace of God that is God's true gift to each and every one of us and our entire world. Amen. And now may the peace of God, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and your minds on Christ Jesus.